Hello, everyone, and it's great to be back with you for another episode of CPAC Live. We have a great show today. We have the former Attorney General Matt Whitaker, who wrote this great book, Above the Law, which you guys all need to get. I'm going to get rid of that glare. Get it at your favorite bookstore, online. I don't want to say the A word, but everywhere you like to buy books, you should go ahead and get this book. And we're also joined by former NFL great Jack Brewer. But I also want to remind you that as we punch through this pandemic and the economic shutdown, CPAC is getting back on the road. And we're going to go first to CPAC West, our second annual CPAC West and the Bass Fry in Reno, Nevada. And that's going to occur on August 8th. Matt Whitaker will be with us. Sarah Carter will be with us. Ted Cruz will be with us. My beautiful and talented wife, Mercedes Schlapp, will be with all of you who go. So go to our website at www.conservative.org and sign up to go see us in Reno. We have lots of great folks that come over from California, people that come throughout the region, really come from all the western states. And it's going to be a great day of interesting delicacies as well as interesting debates. So join us at CPAC West. And you can get all the information, once again, on our website. And we're also going to be in Wisconsin on August 14th, Pennsylvania on September 9th, and Minnesota on October 15th, and Michigan on October 27th. And we're going to be filling in even more dates. And on top of that, I'm going to be doing some travel with my wife for the president's reelection campaign. I know Matt Whitaker will be as well. My wife just got off the Women for Trump bus tour in Wisconsin with Pam Bondi and with Katrina Pearson and with lots of other great folks. And we're going to be doing these kind of campaign events all over the country. And everyone's got you believing in the media that this race is over. Joe Biden's going to win. We're going to talk about that and many other issues with the former Attorney General, acting Attorney General, to be absolutely accurate, but he ran the Justice Department for a pretty long period of time. Matt Whitaker. General Whitaker, thanks for being with us on CPAC Live again.
Mr. Schlapp, I'm always enjoy doing this with you. I think this is my third time doing CPAC Live. I'm really, I had so much fun in Reno last year at CPAC West in the Bass Fry. Adam Laxalt, who's our friend and is on your board and is former Attorney General of Nevada, is such a great guy, and everyone in the Silver State of Nevada is so kind and generous. I'm really looking forward to that trip.
Well, it's great that you call it a state, because Joe Biden did some media in Arizona and he called Arizona city. And so I'm glad that your gray matter is working, Matt. That's a very good thing. How are the book sales going, and do you think you've had a positive impact on explaining to everyday Americans the real lawlessness that occurred under the Obama administration?
Yeah, so my book was very well received. Sold a lot of copies. There's still obviously more available, and if necessary, we can always print more. I think, when you have both the Washington Post and the New York Times say, don't read this book, you're on to something. But in all seriousness, the book really sets out the story of what happened in the first 2 years of the Trump administration and what was going on at the Department of Justice and all the things related to General Flynn and intelligence community, FISA abuse, all those things. It lays out really the case as to how unfairly this president was treated, how unfairly some of these individuals were treated. And I think it's a historically accurate accounting of what happened and how we make sure this never happens again, Matt. Because I know I've seen you talk many times about just how offensive people like Comey, Strzok, Page, McCabe, and others, Brennan Clapper, how they abused their powers and tried to really not only defeat the president in 2016, but then undo the election of 2016. And so that's what my book's about. And it's I'm excited that it's been for sale for a couple months and people are still buying it and coming up to me and asking me to sign their copy, which I'm very happy to do.
Yes, and I'm sure it's going to be happening in Reno as well. But more, specifically on this question of the moral hazard of only Republicans or conservatives getting into legal trouble, while progressive socialist Democrats can break the law willy-nilly And then they seem to fall back on the excuse of, well, this is politics and we shouldn't be prosecuting politics, which I do agree with, by the way. I worry about the fact that we're so upset that they get away with breaking the law that we start criminalizing political disagreements too, which I don't want to do. But the president's getting a lot of heat for the commutation, not the pardoning, but the commutation of Roger Stone's punishment of going to prison, because Roger Stone doesn't, he's no physical threat to society. And those are the types of people we should put in prison, the types of people who could do violence towards other human beings. But he commuted his sentence. And then you have people like Susan Rice having the audacity, Eric Holder, to criticize this when they literally, under oath, went before Congress and lied. And it's demonstrated even in those outlets that you just pointed out, like the New York Times, that they lied. Susan Rice went on national TV and said that, and she did the full Ginsburg. She did every Sunday morning show saying that the reason why Benghazi happened was because of a video, which was a concocted, meaning a lie, that was perpetrated in order to cover up for Hillary Clinton. All these people, McCabe, Comey, Strzok, all these people who have lied under oath, some of them have lost their jobs. None of them have been indicted. It infuriates people. I can't tell you how many people say, if I could just see one person face legal punishment, I might have hope in the system again.
You're absolutely right. And everywhere I go, I hear the same thing. People want accountability. They think that this chapter of what was the Russian collusion fable was unnecessary. I mean, you look at how quickly, let's just compare the two presidential candidates in 2016. Hillary Clinton clearly broke the law. There's no doubt. Nobody believes that she didn't break the law. But that investigation was done quickly. It was done efficiently. And Comey stood up in front of the American people and said, no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute this case. Contrast that to Donald Trump, where every turn there was never any evidence of collusion or any relationship between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. And yet, they wanted to close the investigation in early 2017 before the president was even sworn in. They didn't. They knew when they went in to talk to Flynn that they had no evidence to even conduct that interview. They knew, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok were texting each other saying, there's no there there. We know from the Mueller report that summarized the entire investigation that there was never any evidence. And so, you just look at how Hillary Clinton quickly dispatched with her investigation, even though she violated the law, wasn't prosecuted, and they put the president through like literally hell. I mean, it is, nobody should be subjected to that long of an open investigation. The president of the United States, especially, but all Americans deserve a speedy investigation. And if there are charges, that those charges be brought and have a speedy trial. This president was abused by the Department of Justice, by the special counsel's office. It's unacceptable. And we need to make sure, again, not only does it not happen again, but the people responsible for it, the story needs to be told about how they abused the tools, the facilities, and their positions to politically damage the president. And it is
well,
so obvious what happened.
Do we hear from Durham before the election, you think?
I think we do. I think you will see affirmative steps made by Durham before the election. I think by the end of the summer, Durham will have, it's already been said by the Attorney General Barr that there are targets of the investigation, that they have found criminal acts, and I think you'll see some cases being brought before the end of the summer. I think that's what we should all expect. I think this recent leak that suggested somehow it was going to be nothing was going to happen before the election, I just don't believe that based on everything I know about how the Department of Justice does business.
Good. Well, that's a welcome prediction. Matt Whitaker, if we fast forward to what's going on our streets today, we have murder, lawlessness, looting. People can't go to their homes. People can't go to their businesses. When Black Lives Matter Incorporated, Antifa, these radicalized groups overtake and swarm these cities which are run by socialists and have called the cops back and are defunding the cops. Specific question for you. Research has demonstrated that Act Blue, this online liberal digital platform to raise money, is feeding Nancy Pelosi's majority in the House, Chuck Schumer's effort to take the majority in the Senate, Joe Biden's presidential campaign, Act Blue, is also funding this Black Lives Matter Incorporated, this entity which is fomenting this lawlessness, the murder, the looting, the ripping down of statues, now the attacks on churches and churchgoers, all throughout the country, all going through this hub of Act Blue. Put your legal hat on. Isn't this true collusion and conspiracy to break the law, to foment violence? Shouldn't these politicians be held accountable for the fact that it's all one system that they're getting a lion's share of their money from?
Yeah, I think that the platform that the Democrats have built with Act Blue, I think is when it's used for its not intended purpose, which is to collect money for organizations like this Black Lives Matter Inc., which is a Marxist organization by their very tenets of what they stand for. When those lists are solicited and that facility is used, I think that opens up some very interesting questions, because it appears to me that there is not only an organized effort to fund the Black Lives Matter corporation that is organizing a lot of these disturbances, but we also have, and I know the Department of Justice is looking into this, we need to investigate Antifa and Antifa-related organizations, because these violent
terrorists,
they're anarchists. They're violent terrorists that are really trying to undo the America that we all believe and love. And I don't think you have to look very far. I mean, I always hold now New York City as an example of what used to be good policing, what used to be intelligence-led policing, where you had an intelligence interview in addition to a Mirandized interview. And so the police knew what was going on. They knew who the bad actors in the neighborhoods were, and they were able to target them and get them off the streets. That system, because of de Blasio and his, complete hug-a-thug attitude, is that, what do you see? What's the result, Matt? Murders are going up, violent crime going up. Every time you criticize or take tools away from the police, you end up with less safety, less security. And, I really think that good law enforcement helps liberty. Protecting everyone's rights helps us all exercise our freedoms. And now there are places we're going to end up, if we're not careful. I mean, look to Paris, where there are neighborhoods that you cannot go in. There are suburbs that the police cannot go in because they're controlled by violent Muslim gangs. And I think, unfortunately, if we're not careful, we're going to slide into something of that in some of these major cities that are controlled by liberals.
And the second question about what's going on with this toxic political environment, where I think that there is real legal questions about how things are being funded, is the New York Times itself. You have these for-profit media companies that are literally working as an arm of the Biden for President campaign, which I believe, because corporate money cannot be spent on behalf of a federal candidate, right? Or certainly if you're coordinating with that federal candidate. I think there's real FEC questions with these big media companies that are literally shut down any voice. Think about this. On CNN and MSNBC, they no longer even put anybody on who can articulate support for Trump. At what point are they abusing the trust we've given them with their ability to transmit over our airways and use our communication structure?
I actually think we've probably reached that point. I was watching Meet the Press over the weekend, and they don't even try to give equal time or fairness to the president and his supporters. And what it paints a picture, and I'm glad you mentioned at the beginning. I think what's happening is they're trying to make Republicans and conservatives despondent, to not even try to win this election. And little do they know that we are more and more energized. We are. Not only we're connected in ways that we're not all glued to our TVs watching the mainstream media, but I think we all understand what's at stake in this election. And I'm optimistic that not only is this president going to do whatever it takes to make sure that his policies aren't undone. I think the American people know what's at stake. And we talk about the police and we talk about what's going on in our major cities. I think people from where I'm from, like in Iowa, people where you're from in Kansas and all over the United States of kind of freedom-loving Americans, they don't want what Joe Biden is selling. And what he's selling is chaos, anarchy, and a rule of the mob instead of the rule of law.
Matt Whitaker, we always appreciate you being with us on CPAC Live. Once again, Above the Law. Go buy this book, a great book, and listen to Matt Whitaker when he says we will most likely be hearing from Mr. Durham, or at least that's his prediction, this summer. And I think we're all anxiously awaiting that. And don't be despondent. There are many good things happening in this country, and thank God there are a majority of decent people who don't like this mob violence and this desire to destroy America. We're going to be right back with Jack Brewer after this short video clip.
Alright, so Joe Biden in the black community. But we gotta ask if there's something else behind the mask. Let's rewind it back and look at the fact that Biden compared himself to a token black.
I'm like the token black to the token woman. I was the token young person.
Or in 85 called out of Jackson 5.
There's one more band member that I want you to meet. Ladies and gentlemen, our vocalist tonight, Michael Jackson. Michael, would you please stand?
For the record, that wasn't even Michael Jackson. And among senators, Biden called black youth in the inner city predators.
They will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now.
Then, Biden basically said all minorities are broke.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
And it was a diss when Biden said this.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Wow, was that a joke? Or is Biden just not woke? But y'all, don't blink, is Biden racist? What do you think?
What a great video. And our next guest is the star of that video and is a very important voice in Minnesota and around the country as we face all these really, really stressful questions about what we are as a country and what we are as a people. Former NFL great and the host of Level Headed, Jack Brewer. Jack, thanks for being with us on CPAC Live.
Thanks for having me.
So what are you doing in Minnesota and why does it matter?
You know, I just got back from Minnesota and, you know, I was driving through the streets and it was tough to watch, man. You see basically a war-torn city that, you know, buildings burned up and, you know, boards are on the windows. That's just not Minnesota. It's not, you know, the Minnesota that we all grew up and loved. You know, I went to school there. I played for the Vikings. I was a captain on the Gophers. I got my undergrad and master's there. And that place is really special to me. And what we're seeing is sad. You know, even before George Floyd, you look at Minneapolis and you look at the district that's ran by Omar, and it had the highest African-American unemployment in the entire nation. And that's sad, right? It's a place where I remember, man, when I came to Minnesota and I came up from Texas and they were recruiting me to play football, one of the main things that they drove to me was the opportunity for African Americans to work in the city. My coaches, Coach Glenn Mason, used to highlight that of the opportunities there. And so to see the realities of what that place has become now is truly sad. And I think it's time for this election cycle for the folks of Minnesota, just like so many other places around the country, to stand up against this nonsense that's going on with all these liberals running our city into the ground.
And I think there's a lot of, you know, quite honestly, voices from people who aren't black who are almost told that they don't have a voice right now, that this is a time when they need to be quiet. But when we look at the victims of the crime spikes in places like Minneapolis and New York City and Chicago, we see a lot of people of color being shot, being gunned down, being the victims of all different types of violent crime. You know, socialism doesn't seem to be working. Defunding the cops seems to hurt black people too often.
You know, I'm just glad that the nation is aware of what's going on. You know, it's been a long time that this thing has really been erupting in these cities, these inner city cities, where you have Democratic leaders that have removed God from our schools. You know, they've appeased versus being leaders. You cannot lead by appeasing people, and that's what they're trying to do. These far left policies that have really come and ripped the soul out of our kids. You know, these cities are the places where you have so many fatherless babies. in all these democratic policies that have led to the destruction that we're seeing in our streets. I mean, whenever you have there was 104 people shot, 18 died in one weekend in Chicago. You have 60 and 70 people shot in cities, American cities, yet they don't call for the president's help. They don't call for the National Guard. You know, they would rather they let their pride lead their decision making. And it really goes back to the dollar, because every single one of these politicians, they raise money off of putting out to the liberal media that we need to take our guns away. They raise money off of all these divisive issues, but when the reality is most of these crimes are committed by people who illegally own guns, and they don't stand against it. And you know, it's really sad. You know, what really upset me is after Barack Obama became president, I thought finally we're gonna fix Chicago. You think it's his backyard, right? But the place got worse. Got worse. And now you see that every time President Trump says something, these liberal politicians, mayor of Chicago, they all stand against him. Wouldn't you be calling out for the safety of your people? Why would you let politics come for what's best in the goodwill of people? It's just wrong. It really is.
So when we see these efforts to defund the cops, when we hear from radical groups that are saying somehow the family is a bad institution, when we hear them say that somehow churches are places that should be attacked and statues of Jesus should be ripped down, not only is it abhorrent and evil, it's exactly the opposite of what we need to start investing in. We need to start investing in our families. We need to start getting people to go back to church and open up our churches. Is that are those radical ideas?
You know, I had a chance to speak in Montana and also in South Dakota last week to a group of conservatives. And I told them, you know, now the conservative needs to stand up. We can no longer sit back and be quiet. This is an issue of spirituality. These people have robbed and they have removed God from every single segment of the American population, starting with our kids. And the most sick thing about this is that we have a fatherless epidemic in our nation. We have 77% of young black kids born out of wedlock. And during that same time, and you look at the statistics, and 71% of black kids or all kids who drop out of high school are fatherless. And you see you're 20 times more likely to go to prison when you're fatherless. I work in the prisons. And so now what you've done is you remove the father in the flesh, and which means that these kids don't have fathers in the spirit. We're teaching kids in these liberal public schools that they can pick their gender. We're teaching these kids that they can't praise Jesus Christ in our schools. We forget that our nation was founded off of men and women who came over here to praise Jesus Christ. And that's what our foundations of our nation. And as conservative, we got to stop holding back. We got to talk about Jesus again. We got to get Christian principles back into our schools. We cannot let them to take money from our religious schools and give them to all these secular programs. That's what's killing our nation, because our fatherless kids need us right now. They need men just like you and I. They need us to come in and help bridge that gap. We have to be true Christians, and Jesus told us to serve. It's time for us to serve, but we got to stand against this evil that's happening in our land right now, because we do have a problem with our land. Our land is sick at this moment.
You know, I can't disagree with anything you said. I feel like saying amen, brother, when you say it, because I just feel like your voice needs to be heard. And but you have this other question about real racism in society, which does have to be tackled, and racism is inconsistent with the faith that we share. Do you think we're getting caught up politically with this charge of racism just being thrown around in a very cavalier sense, in a very cavalier way by the left for political reasons, and not to solve the problem, but almost to stir it up to get the political benefit of racial animosity in our cities and across the land?
It's sad. And the reason why is because we wouldn't expect anything more from them. This is the way that they play ball.
It is.
They want to divide. And so that's why I say, as conservatives, it's time for us to take the high road, right? While they talk about race, we need to highlight what we have. You see, President Trump has given us something very unique. And I've told him this before. And that's why I think his messaging can improve just a little bit. And I don't always agree with everything he says. But whenever you have the record of President Trump and someone calls you racist, yet we're letting African Americans out of jail, President Trump is freeing the blacks while the liberal policies are the one that put him in prison. Let's talk about that. And let's talk about it like that. You talk about schools. The liberal policies are supporting these teachers unions and raising money so deeply that they're against school choice. So basically, they want to keep our kids segregated. Let's start calling them out on that. We are for school choice because we want every kid to have the opportunity to learn. We are for real school integration, not segregation. And we want to start talking about policies. Look at pro-life. You look at what the left is doing. In the city of New York City, you have more black babies aborted than you have born. That is disgusting. And that should make any human being sick when you think about that. You can't get more racist than killing 20 million black babies over the course of 30 years. That is absolutely ridiculous. You see, the black population is the only population that's not really growing because we're killing all the babies. And so if you can go policy after policy, right? You look at opportunity zones. No one was putting a nickel into these inner city areas before President Trump passed opportunity zones and actually incentivized investment. I've personally helped fund an opportunity zone. And so this is giving folks the opportunity of all races to actually invest in the cities and communities that need it the most across America. The other side is so racist in their policies, we have to start calling them out for it.
So you said it's a time for conservatives, for people of faith, for Christians to stand up. In your life, when did you realize, not in a faith context, but in a political context, when did you realize that these socialist policies were simply counterproductive to the people you cared about?
At the end of the Barack Obama administration, man, I created the NFL Players for Obama, and I campaigned for him twice. And for me, it was tough to make that switch because I had been brainwashed for so long. I mean, from my parents to, my relatives, anyone around me always told me that African Americans had to vote Democratic because Republicans were for rich white men. But I had never really given Republicans a chance. I had never really deeply looked at the issues for what they stood for. And when I started doing that, I started realizing, man, when Barack Obama changed the definition of marriage, and then when Barack Obama went 8 years and did nothing for Chicago, when he went 8 years and didn't pass any real criminal justice reform, you're talking about someone that I was voting for a black man, and then it seems like he was passing anti-black policies. That's why I call President Trump the first black president. One, because they treat him like a black man, but two, he was actually passing policies to help black people. And so I think it's just really sick the way that the left has painted conservatives, the way they painted President Trump, and they don't give any credit where credit is due.
Well, Jack, when you play football, it would be very hard to win the game if you're playing against an opposing team that was aligned with all the refs. And that's what it's like to be a Republican or a conservative or a Trump supporter. We're fighting against Joe Biden and the socialists, but the people in the news media, supposedly the objective observers, are in the tank for the other team. But the good news is there's a bigger ref that's watching the whole game. We like to be more aligned with that heavenly power than these terrible battles we're in. And your voice is so important, and we appreciate you joining us here today. We want to have you back on because I think my view politically is, before even this tragedy of George Floyd and this whole question about Black Lives Matter and all what's going on in our cities, what was going on in this country is that I think the first time in a long time, the African American vote was the swing constituency in the Democratic primary, and I think it could be the most important vote in this general election to determine who wins the presidency. I don't know if you agree with that. Maybe you have a reaction. We're going to have you back on and kind of tease that out a little bit more.
Yeah, man, you're dead on. If you look at how things are changing, I think the coronavirus as well is going to play a big part of that. You got college kids that aren't going to be at school. They're going to be home again. So hopefully their conservative parents are in their ears. You see the inner city communities now. It's being highlighted. Folks are tired of this violence in their own streets and no one doing anything about it. I think we really have an opportunity right now. But you said something important, conservatives. We got to start letting our Black voices lead us. It's time for that. That's who we are at our core. At our core, we are just like Jesus said. We want to take care of the most vulnerable, the fatherless, the most underserved. Unfortunately, in America right now, that happens to be the Black segment of our population too often. Let the Black voices talk. We are conservatives that need to be heard. And if we do that, we'll win this election. But more importantly, we'll heal this land.
Oh, man. From your lips to God's ears, Jack Brewer, thanks for being with us on CPAC Live. We're going to have you back on the show. Get all over this country and spread that message because it's an important message. We appreciate you all watching us again on CPAC Live. We're loving doing the show. I think the message that you heard on this show is very healing for each one of us as we really mourn for the state of our country. Thanks for joining us again on CPAC Live.